Today's video is brought to you by Seek Sleep. So this is our newest supplement and our first supplement. It helps you sleep because it contains some of the most important micronutrients you need for your sleep. And if you're going to try this challenge, you're going to need some good quality sleep. Welcome back to Seek Strength and welcome back to Seek Stan. Today we are covering my current stage of the journey of where I am with the 5x5 Toshiki squat challenge. For reference, if you don't know what it is essentially 5x5 at about 80 to 85% and then followed by 3x10 at about 60% of that value. Now, if you don't know where this is coming from, when we were in Japan 2 weeks ago, Toshiki was talking about my ability to squat and he thinks I should be able to squat 330 kilos. Then I asked him how and what he was doing when he squatted 321 kilos. He said he was doing 5x5 5 times a week. He peaked at 260 for 5x5 multiple days and sessions in a row, followed by which he did 170 3x10 with 1 minute's rest immediately after the 5x5. Now, I just want to be clear, I don't think this is a program. I see this as a challenge, which I go over a bit in the video in one of the training sessions. And that is something that I want to do because it is difficult, not because I think it's the best way to do it. I know some of you are trying it and I really do not recommend you attempt it. That's why I haven't been answering any technical questions regards it because there's nothing technical to think about. It's not an endorsement, and I'm not saying this because I think you should run our squat program. I'm saying that because, and this is in line with what we've said for years, this isn't the best way to do something, and you need to be very, very experienced, well adapted and well suited for particular kinds of training. And the more likelihood is that you're going to get injured and not progress than you are from actually doing this. However, the way I see this is as a challenge, as I see this as something that is laid down before me by Toshiki, and it's something that as soon as I heard it, I knew I had to try it and I knew I had to follow it all the way through to see what it is. I like to think of it as like a psychological adventure, and not like mushrooms, but as something, a mental challenge, something that needs to be done. Of course, it's very, very physical, but I know I'm quite good at squatting, but I wanted to know, could I do this and hopefully push for PBs in it? Ideally, I would just keep running the Road to Anywhere squat program. Like you saw, I was halfway through the second run of the Road to Anywhere squat program and I did the 3x8 at 205, absolutely no problem. And one of the reasons I think I'm able to carry out this program is because I have such high base of volume before that. So without further ado, let's look at the session last week for the day after I got really sick on Wednesday. So let's look at the Thursday session and then we'll see how I repeated the 220 kilo 5x5, equaling my PB 5x5 again almost a week later. Alright boys and girls, so today we're back with the training vlogs in the home gym. We're squatting. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I fucking tired today. I'm actually not, do you know what, I'm not tired. What happened was, yesterday, I was very sick. And what tends to happen when I'm sick is it will like peak in an afternoon, a night's issue, then in the morning, and then I'll like, within like kinda, after like 24 hours, I'll perk up a lot. So yesterday morning, I was pushing the buggy and I was barely able to function, super lethargic. But by the evening, I think I had like 2 naps. And I think by the evening, I was able to do like an hour of cardio. Today's the day after. I got like 9 hours sleep last night. Feel a lot better today. But it's like 8:30 and I was sitting down in the chair and I was like, fuck, I don't even know if I'm tired or I just from the sickness yesterday. So I always feel funny talking about these things. Obviously I got a haircut as well, looks a bit better today. I never want to feel like I'm complaining because I'm not, but I do want to, if I'm doing a training vlog, I do want to say what it is going on, you know. So the fuck was that? So if I do feel tired or if there's something sore, I'm not telling you so you manage expectations. I'm just telling you because that's what's going on in my mind during the training vlog. So if you're wondering about certain decisions. So there's that. So we are doing the Toshiki training vlog. I know there's a heat wave going on in Europe at the moment, but I've got the heater on here. It's a fully insulated shed except for the roof, but I'll get to that someday. But the haircut's pretty nice actually. But heater's on. I just turned it off for the sake of this. And I'm very grateful we don't live in a country where we experience 50-degree weather. Ireland gets a lot of bad weather, but it's very rarely deadly weather. So I'm doing the Toshiki squat program. Before I start, I just want to go through one thing. I shouldn't even call it the Toshiki squat program. I should call it the Toshiki squat challenge. So I'm not doing it because I think it's the best program. I'm doing it because it's a challenge. It's a thing, an event, an adventure, an endeavor that I want to do. I don't think it's something that is the best way to program for squats. It is it's like I think the Japanese call it the akugaku. Is the name some Japanese monks have for a thing they do where they run a marathon every day. Now this isn't nowhere near as hard as that challenge, but it's something that appeals to me to get done, and I think many people understand that adventure comes in different forms, and this is kind of one of them for me. And it's going to work to a certain degree because I'm good at squatting and I'm pretty well experienced, so I'll make it work. But I don't think it's something you should do. And I'm not saying that so I think you should go run the RTA squat program. It really isn't the case of that. We've been saying this for years, this isn't a good way to program. But what I am saying is I don't want to answer a whole lot of questions about it, and I'm getting a lot of questions on Instagram and some questions here on YouTube. But me answering those questions would make it seem like I'm endorsing it or there's a particular method to the madness for this. It's heavy squats for as much volume as you can manage in that day, more or less. So any way of me talking about it when I answer those questions is going to seem like I think this is something you should do. There's no real method to the madness other than heavy squats and squat often. So think of it more as watching me do an event rather than me teaching you a way of doing something. You can learn some stuff from it, but it's not so much a case of how to program your squats, because you're going to run into issues after a while. But all that said, today is going to be between 180 and 225 kilos for 5x5. I'll know when I get to 170, maybe 200. Okay boys, and the one girl that watches this, we've got 2 sets done. Does it feel heavy? Yes. Does my hip hurt? Only the soft tissue, not the bone. So if I can do 2 sets of 200, I can do 3 more. this particular session is actually the Tuesday before the day I got sick. So the last session you just saw there was the Thursday. I flew back in on the Sunday evening after I think about 18 hours flight time. The Monday I just did cardio and I didn't do any squatting. And this 200 kilo 5x5 on the Tuesday was moving very well. I knew I was slightly sick or getting a little bit sick. My wife and son were a little bit chesty and I knew they're coming off the tail end of being sick, and I figured I am next in line. Anyone with kids know that no matter how good you are or how normally you don't get sick, once your kids have something, they're so close to your genetic pathway, it already knows your immune system and it's only a matter of time before it gets you. So you can actually hear in my voice a little bit, I think, slightly chesty still. Again, just extreme fatigue on that Wednesday, but we're good again. Now, one interesting thing on these squats, and you'll see it a little bit later on the most recent session how I addressed this, is my hips were actually swinging up a little bit or swinging back as I came up out of the squat. It was also moving slightly further back than it normally would going into the bottom of the squat because my right hip was quite sore. So it was kind of traveling between my hip flexor and my IT band just as I begun the descent. So if I pushed my hips really far forward, get like a 5 or 6 out of 10 pain, and then at the very bottom maybe 6 to 7 pain. On some days it was peaking a little bit more, a little bit less. It's most certainly just soft tissue, so it's something I know I'm not really making any worse. So luckily I'm well experienced at aches and pains at this stage, so I have a good idea of when something hurts and when something can just be ignored. Now of course I'll address it, and I am addressing it, but it's okay to keep training through certain things if you know what's going on. Now, I definitely do need to address it, and I have been with some soft tissue stuff, mostly on my adductors, and that is incredibly painful. So, kind of upper groin down towards the VMO along the inside is frighteningly sensitive, but it needs to be worked on. So you can see in these squats, hips are shifting back. I could feel it a little bit, but I wasn't thinking too much about it at the time. I just wanted to get it done. Now, in the meantime, I've still kept up my snatching and cleaning. So, as many of you might have remembered, or have been, some of you even noticed that I wasn't doing any of the behind the neck jerks in Japan, and I was hoping to do a bigger set there. But unfortunately, my elbows got very, very sore and inflamed, and the tricep tendon in particular. That has cooled down massively. It's almost gone, or near enough as to be gone at the moment, thanks to some very interesting exercises that the Korean national team physio showed me, which we'll do a video on at a later point. But suffice to say that the lifts are feeling very, very good. So I'm just sticking between kind of 90 and 100 for snatches and about 120 to maybe 140 on the cleans. The cleans were the most painful for my elbows, but they feel super good at the moment. The technique feels great because I've been working the technique a lot. And of course, I've spent years snatching, so the technique feels very good. And given how strong my legs are at the moment, it's no wonder that the snatch does feel quite good. So I'm going to slowly push those a little bit. And if they feel good, I'll keep pushing them, but I'll keep the priority on the squats. Now, moving on. So this is on Sunday, where I repeated the 220 kilo 5x5. Now I was feeling not the best this day, but I knew the leg strength was there for it, and I knew it was due because the session before I'd just done 160 5x5 and like 70 kilos for the 3x10. So in this session I knew that the 220 was going to happen. So first 3 sets were essentially no problem. Hip was shifting a little bit, but there was very little pain in my hip. But I was still with the slightly off technique where I was falling forward slightly. Now, the second last set was tough, but the last set was absolutely brutal. I was slightly lightheaded when I was doing the 220 kilos for the last set. I had to take a lot of breaths in between the reps. So this is the 4th set of 5 here. So again, bar speed is good, which is very reassuring and moving very well. And again, not with the hype squad, not in Korea, just in my shed. So a little bit different kind of motivation to bring to the table. So this is the last set. You can see in the first rep, I was like, oh shit, this is going to take a bit of work. Now I knew I could do it, but I knew I would have to really force myself to get it done. And thankfully I did. So you can see as the reps go on, there's a long time between each rep. Getting a little bit lightheaded, you can see me slightly blinking. I really had to breathe through it. And on the last rep, I was very, very happy to get this done. I think given still kind of recovering from the sickness and the session, so I was quite happy to get this sorted, and I'll push for a PB maybe this week or next week. We'll see if I feel good for maybe 225 or 230 if all is moving well. Now, this is last night's session, so you can see in the first set here, my hips are moving back slightly, just not as much as before, because the hip is much better. But if you'll see here, as the sets go on, it actually gets much better and much more vertical, much more accustomed to the type of squat that I'm normally doing. And so what I was thinking about here was just really pushing my hips forward as I squatted down. So driving my knees forward, but also pushing my hips in as I squatted down and pushing my hips in at the bottom. And this kept my torso very, very upright, kept the loads on my quads as much as possible. And you can see here in the third set, it's getting a lot better. Much more consistent with the torso angle. You can see I'm really driving vertically into the barbell, and it makes a huge difference to both the aesthetics of the lift, but also the quality of technique of the squat when I keep this on. So it was funny that was happening, because when my hip flexor was aching as I squatted, it was because when I pushed it forward, it felt more of a load, so I naturally kept a bit more of a hinge, which took more of the load off the hip. But the technique stayed consistently, but I didn't need to do that because my hip wasn't as or at all sore really on this session, but I still remained with the compromised technique, which is very interesting and certainly a lesson to be learned from there. Then moving on to the last set, so we just hit a pause at the last rep again. So if I'm feeling good on a certain day, I'll hit a pause in the last rep just to assert dominance, and these are feeling very good. So to be honest, looking at these and how they felt, I probably could have done the 225 by 5, but I didn't want to have to start off the week with an absolute balls out session on the squatting, as I rested on Monday and I did hill sprints and jiu-jitsu on Monday, and I just wanted to get a nice solid base on the first session. So I categorize them with medium, light and heavy sessions. So light being like 160, medium between 200 and 210, and then the heavy is anything 220 plus. And then I finished off with some 120 kilo 3x10s. So usually do these without knee sleeves or without belts, and sometimes I'll do them with a hip circle on, like you saw, just to address that external rotation and train some of the glute med a little bit more, which I feel usually my hip flexor feels better if I train that in the warm-up a little bit more. So it's something I need to work on slightly further. Other than that, body feels very good, and that's actually the heaviest set of 10 I've done on the 3x10s after, so keeping that to about a minute. The 5x5s took, I think, about 12 minutes from the first set to the last set to get finished for the 5x5, so I try and move nice and promptly through those, and I am hopefully going to keep pushing those. For my goals, I think I'll need about 240 5x5, which would be a pretty big 5x5 PR, but given how well things are moving, given that I'm very switched on and dedicated to the squad at the moment, I think it's very, very feasible, and I will keep gunning for it. So I hope you enjoy this series, and I will keep documented as much as possible, and I hope you enjoy watching. Best of luck if you do try it. Again, I don't recommend it, but best of luck if you do. And let me know if you do. But remember, it's not a program. It's not how you should be trying to improve your squat. It's not a good idea. However, it is a fun challenge. Fun, well, depending on what you call fun.